let's assume that in Christ's teaching here, that there are really people that need, as opposed to the people who want. And so we'll see, and let's see how that plays out. Let's see how that plays out. Because I think that he takes that into context. But let's see how it plays out. The second one, the parallel to that is, so blessed are those who provide needs, because their needs will be provided. But you notice the double-edged sword here. That means you have a need. So do you want to really be eleimon in Greek? Not really. You know. Let's see what the next one says. Matikos, supremely blessed are the... Now, we like pure. The word is katharos. What's katharos? Catharsis. What's a catharsis?
Cleansing.
Well,
Spewing.
in Greek thought, there are two different types of catharsi. There is a catharsi that is physical, and there's a catharsi that is spiritual or thoughtful. And so, like for example, Socrates and Aristotle talk about a catharsis. They mean a mental catharsis, but there's another catharsis which is vomiting or cleansing of the bowels. Okay? So the word is in the Greek, blessed are those who are purged in cardia, in their emotions. Do you want to be purged in your emotions? What does that mean?
Get rid of them.
Yeah, what would we say in English though? Well, what would we say if you were purged of your emotions? You are emotionless. Is that good? But look what it says. For they will, optinemai, see with open, wide eyes. Wide open eyes. Theos. This is kind of like the one before. It has a positive and a negative connotation. The negative connotation is that your emotions have been purged, but you can see God. This kind of sounds like meditation a little bit here, this Jesus guy is talking about in the Greek. This is before meditation, so I guess he gets credit. But this is interesting because, if we look at the dualistic structure, let's look at the next one. I want to get into some of the meat of the other stuff. Blessed makarthos, this is the next two. Supremely blessed are those who make shalom. And I add that because it's literally in the Greek. See, did I write down? Yeah, it's erina poios. Erina, in the Greek means peace. To have peace. Erina. Erina is the word in Paul's letters. If we see erina, we know he meant to say shalom. Because when he wrote about erina, he was writing to the Jews. When he wrote about charis, or grace, he was writing to the Gentiles. That's typical. So Christ is talking here, if we follow the Paulian kind of thing, he's talking about the Jews. So, supremely blessed are those who make shalom, for they will be kaleo. Now here's interesting. Kaleo means to be called, as well as, you can, when we think of kaleo, parakleo, ecclesia, ecclesia, what do we think of? We think of the verb, right? This is a verb here, kaleo. It's not called like as in I'm naming you. They would have used another word. They would use genomen. He uses instead the word called. In other words, when I call you, I am calling you to come. They'll be called the huios, the offspring of God. Now this is interesting culturally. Think about this. How many sects do we have now of Judaism? We have 4. Pharisees, Sadducees, Essenes, and Zealots. Are there any shalom makers in that group? No. The Pharisees are fighting the Sadducees, and they're fighting the Zealots, and they're fighting the Essenes. There's not any peacemakers in that group. The Zealots want to cut throats. The Essenes are hiding out in the wilderness on purpose away from the temple. The Sadducees are keeping close guard on the temple. They're probably the nicest of the crowd. And then the Pharisees are separating themselves for religious reasons. There's no shalom makers. Who's Christ talking to here? Well, to all the Jews, right? Arena, to those who make shalom. Because he's telling them, you're not doing it. And therefore, because you're not doing it, you're not going to be offspring of God. It's really deep stuff. Sorry, not supposed to. That's a technical Air Force term. Okay, good stuff.
You're in so much trouble.
I'm in trouble. 10. Marikos, supremely blessed are those who are diako, who flee, who are pursued. Basically, we read it persecuted. The implication is persecution. They flee because of equitability. Now, here you go. So, if you have what, and I didn't even talk about diakosune, did I? Let's talk about diakosune really quick. In the Greek, diakosune comes directly from, is this my note right here? Diakosune comes directly from the word dike. That's my note on this. Because otherwise I'll have to dig into I got the big ones here. When I say diakosune in Greek, diakosune comes from the word to mean equity. It means equity in being. So if you remember Epicurus, if you remember moderation in all things, that's the Epicurean view, moderation in everything, that's the Greek diakosune. So not too much food, not too little food, not too much drink, not too little drink, not too much religion, not too much, not too much, not too little. That's the Greek view. That's diakosune. And it comes from, what's really important to recognize is it comes from the word dike. Dike, you know what dike means, right? Dike means justice. The Greeks believed in their very souls, the highest thing that you could aspire to as a Greek was diakosune, that you would have equity in everything. They believed that was justice, that the world was just if you were diakosune. In other words, for example, you don't have too much wealth, because too much wealth would make you corrupt. You don't have too little wealth, because too little wealth makes you eremo, right? You don't have too much emotion. You don't have too little emotion. To the Greeks, balance is perfect. And isn't it neat that Jesus used those words? Do you have a question?
Well, I was just thinking in our modern view of justice, the symbol of the balance, the blind justice, that still pervades into our concept of law.
And do you know where they got that, right? Where did the symbol come from? From Greek, because the dikes are the symbols of justice. For example, what's Athena? Dike Athena? There's Nike Athena. What's Nike Athena? Nike Athena. Nike Athena is the Athena of war. Dike Athena is the Athena of justice. The Nike Athena has a sword in her hands. The Dike Athena has what? The scales in her hands. Thank you. See, this stuff, you know, we look at statues. We look at archaeology. And we scratch our heads. And we shouldn't be scratching our heads, because our teachers should have been teaching us this stuff from the very beginning of how all this fits together. That's history, right? If you know history, you know how it fits together. Because it doesn't matter if you know that there's a Dike Athena. What matters is, do you know what a Dike Athena means in the history of the world? See? And this is what's so neat, because what do the Gospels mean? Matthew is a logos to telos, starting with a thesis statement, which then leads us into this very complex set of paradoxes. Let's go on with the paradoxes. But anyway, so do you see this diakosune? If you want to picture someone balancing on a ball. The Greeks would see a balancing on a ball as perfect diakosune, symbolically, if the Greeks were symbolically thinking that way. As a matter of fact, and when I give this talk in other locations, when I talk about diakosune, there is actually a many Greek statues that show diakosune as Mercury, or a winged guy, standing on a ball. Well, we take it to mean, many times the Greeks told us in the writing about these statues that they were diakosune. Our interpretation many times is it's Mercury, winged Mercury, taking his message across the world. But it obviously shows a person, a god. By the way, Mercury was the god of diakosune. He was a thief, but he was also a messenger for the gods. He represents diakosune in the Greek mind. Anyway, very interesting things in here. So the next two were the peacemakers and those who flee. Do you guys see this? See the relation between the two? Who's causing who to flee? Those that are not making peace are causing those to flee who are truly righteous. Let's see the next two. Marakaros, supremely blessed are you when people insult you, and literally it's odizino, who defame you and dikeo, cause you to flee. So now we're seeing a parallel back to the previous verse. Falsely, it says, persecute you falsely, dikeo you falsely, and say all kinds of evil, who epo, past tense, all kinds of porneros. We're going to see this word porneros. I think I put it up, porneros. It's a word we get pornographic from, but literally pornographic rima. Porneros rima, pornographic stories that are about evil against you because of my sake. Literally hineka, by reason of me. Now this is interesting because this is the first verse where he talks about himself. And the second one is this. Listen to what it says. We say rejoice. Guess what this word is? Chario. Charis. Grace. Grace to you. And be agalio. Jump for joy, because great, polos, is your misthos. Misthos is a word of the day. Misthos is a word this is the word that the Yeshua taught a long time ago. M-I-S-T-H-O, this is in, but misthos. Misthon is the form that we see in most of it. Misthon, misthos. Misthos means a pay for service. Every time you see reward in these three chapters, 5, 6, and 7, it means misthos, which is a pay for service. So literally this says, grace to you. Jump for joy, because much is your pay for services in Aranos. For in the same way they decay, they cause you to flee, the prophets, the foretellers who were before you. The end, and I think that's the end of the Makar. The end of the Makar. And I should have done a parallel. But a parallel of the Makar. So you can do it yourself. If you pull out the Makar and you look at the parallels. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Think, how many total are there? Are there 10? 6.
Mm-hmm.
So there's 6 total. So there's 12 total, right? With
12, yeah.
12 total, and each are duos, because they're following Hebraic form. They are synopsis to the body of the text that will follow this. And so everything fits into it. Ending with the last two, which means that you can take it whatever you think he means that will happen. But the follow-on is a follow-on directly from these. And so it starts. You are the halas. Literally the word halas means prudence in Greek. It means prudence. Now halas also means salt. What do we call this in English when we have dual meanings? Well, we can call this a pun. Or there's another word in English that we talk about when a word has two meanings and is given both meanings at the same time. But basically it's a pun of a type. So when he says